can you run an ultra on training 4 days a week?
Yeah, I think this is a good topic. I mean, I've done it, and next week I'll be doing it again. But with one caveat, I have experience, so we have to throw that in there. I started running ultras in 2011 was my first ones, and I'm running an ultra every month. So I've kind of already, I've got experience. I've spent many days out there just doing it with little training sometimes, and sometimes it bites me in the ass, like Bandera. um, Pacing duties, I didn't do a very good job at.
Well,
So
that was a downfall from the beginning, so
yeah, true, yeah, yeah. But there's lots of possibilities and questions that would go into it. I believe if we were coaching a person that wants to do this, where you're at, what your base mileage is, what your goal race, or what your 50K you want to run or 50 mile you want to run, how long you have, how much time during the day. There's so many questions, right? When a coach starts working with a client, there's a lot of questions that have to get answered. So we're not going to be able to answer all those questions because we don't know where this person's exactly at. But I think we could just go off of just some experience. If you wanted to run a 50K, and you got some base mileage under you, we'll just say like 3 months of base mileage, and we'll call that 20, 30 miles a week. And you're doing that 4 days a week. Can you run a 50K? Yeah, I think so. The part that's going to get sticky is, and I know Justin and I both like to schedule back-to-back long runs, is that where we're not, as coaches, we're not going to be able to prescribe that big of a day that we would probably like to see. So we'd have to cut it down. Say instead of, I'm just throwing out numbers. They're not going to be real legit numbers, but a 16 mile on Saturday, then a 14 miler on Sunday. We probably can't give that to you because you have 2 more days in there. And whatever those other 3 days you have, we don't know if you can run 4 days in a row or we have to go run a day, off a day, all those other things. Then what's your life like? Do you work a full-time job? Do you work, 10, 12 hours? Is this really going to cut into your time of family and all that other stuff, work? So without all that, it gets really hard and you kind of just have to be the judge. And, I think it's going to be more of a mental game for that 50K, wherever you're at, than it's going to be a consistency and going in there very trained.
yeah. I think for me, if I'm scheduling a 4 day a week, and I think it's possible, it is possible. It's not going to be a pretty finish. You'll be able to finish, but it won't be a pretty finish. I think you'll be, mid to back of the pack for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. You really got to look at like how much time in the day of those 4 days a week do you have? I don't think that a back-to-back long run probably makes sense because backloading the training like that is, asking for injuries. Running a 16 and a 14, that's 28 miles or 29 miles, 30, we'll just call it 30 miles on a weekend, and then maybe getting 10 through the week. Like, yeah, you're getting 40 miles a week, but are they structured correctly? And so I think if I was, to be coaching in this situation, I'm going to load one long run and then you're not going to have a back-to-back long run.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel a little bit different about a 50K doing back-to-back long runs. I don't think necessarily that that's needed in a 50K. I think 50 miles and up, yeah, I think it's definitely needed. But I think for a 50K, you can follow a lot of like what marathon training does, and they do one long run, and then maybe like I usually will do like half of that, right? So if they do a 12 miler, they'll do a 6, maybe up to 10 miles. And I know somebody's saying like, oh, you do a 20 miler and a 10 miler, yeah, but a 10 miler, when you're deep in ultra training is really, it's long, but it's not long. It's a
No, it's
mid,
not.
it's a mid run, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
I'm talking back-to-back long runs would be a 30-20, doing
Mm-hmm.
50 miles on the weekend.
Yeah.
That's the back-to-back long runs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a particular number on what a long run looks like because it all depends on where you are, your training. I go through down weeks, right? Or down months where I'm in my down months, and an 8 miler might be a long run for me. And, when we're peaking up for 100K, 100 miler, I'm at 30 miles for a long run. So, the long run changes, but I think that I would only really schedule one true long run. And I probably wouldn't even go as high as what I would do if they were in a full training block. So, running a 50K, maybe like an 18 to 20 miler would be like the max that
Max,
you
that'd
would
be way
go